Break up the Scarlet Knights. Okay, break up those Scarlet Knights as we lead wire to wire against Penn State. Yes, Penn State, not a great team, for our second Big Ten win in a row and our first Big Ten win on the road, 85-72. And Steve Peichel and Rutgers led virtually this entire game. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to say I'm a little bit surprised. We sprint out to a 9-0 lead. Or was it 11-0? It was either 9 or 11-0. And Tariq and Haroon were and Dylan Grant were leading the way early on. And Agboli gets us on the board early. Not ironically, he won't be heard from the rest of the night. Then we go up. Was it 16-2 or 18-2? And I'm texting a buddy. We're texting back and forth, and we're like, okay, how much of this lead are we going to lose? But we wind up winning or leading this game by double digits for most of the game. There was a couple of times where Penn State kind of fought their way back to within 10 points, got into single digits. But this Rutgers team was not going to cave, and they managed to stretch out the lead every time or whenever Penn State tried to get back in it. And early on, the story of the game was we're hitting our shots. Penn State isn't, and they were turning the ball over. We wind up getting a halftime lead, 39-20, 19-point lead on the road is our biggest ever since entering the Big Ten. And that's, 10, 11 years now. So we were led by, we led by as many as 20 points. We were led by Tariq's game high 22 points on 7 of 12 shooting, 7 for 8 on free throws. Sorry, Tariq, this is the second game in a row where you missed a free throw. No worries, though. You're still around 89.7%. Had 7 assists. Dylan Grant, 15 points on 6 of 8 shooting. And Lino Mark, career high. He's a little bit erratic, needs a little more consistency, but he's starting to get some more production. And he had a career high 12 points and 5 of 6 shooting. Haroon Zerno doesn't disappear this game. Not one of those up and down Tale of Two Cities guys. Has double-digit scoring for the second game in a row. 13 points, 4 10 shooting. So with 5 games to go, we're 11-15. We're 11 in the Big Ten, and we are not taking up the bottom of the Big Ten, which most people kind of prognosticated that we could be that single-digit Seton Hall kind of team this year. Where are the points going to come from? We're 2 games ahead of Penn State, Oregon, Northwestern, and we will likely pass Maryland for 14th place to get that first round bye in the Big Ten tournament. Maryland, I believe, goes to Indiana, which means, or is it Illinois? It's either Illinois, Indiana. And either way, they'll probably lose, which means we'll get a bye. I don't know what that means in the long run. Nonetheless, early on, it was about turnovers. Penn State had, I think, like 10 turnovers in the first half, which at one point was more points than they had scored, or at least field goals made. And Tariq sometimes takes a little time to get warmed up. Nice game against Maryland. He warmed up late. Tonight, it was in the first half where he had 15 points. Dylan Grant and Haroon also contributing early. And those 10 turnovers by Penn State turned into 19 points for Rutgers. And we saw how against Maryland, that was also one of the secret ingredients to getting a win. Um, Lino Mark, most of his production was in the second half. So we're getting these, I call it the tale of two cities. Whether it's individual players or the team as a whole, half to half, game to game, week to week, just divergently different kind of players and teams. We're seeing a lot of that. But Lino Mark shined in the second half, scoring 7 of his 12 points. Penn State tried, they went on a couple runs, and you're like, okay, how far is this going to go? And then Rutgers always managed to pull away. We had, at several points, had 20-point lead. It did get down to single digits late in the game before, once again, Tariq finishing strong and sealing the win for Rutgers. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there, not so much by myself, although I'm surprised at the level of his production, how well Tariq has done transitioning to the Big Ten. Nobody expected him to do that. They questioned what his actual size was. Can he be able to score and play physically in the Big Ten? I thought he'd be able to just on volume alone. I figured he'd be a 13, 14 point per game kind of guy. And he's at just under 17 points per game. So, and just under 90% free throw shooting. He was 7 for 8 again tonight. Second game in a row, he missed a free throw. I don't know, Tariq. But nonetheless, Rutgers, after Penn State, kind of trying to make a little bit of a run in the second half, Rutgers would push it back out to double digits, 17-point leads. And with Tariq icing it down the stretch. Now it wasn't all wine and roses. We still didn't do well in a couple of areas. 3-point shooting, 31%. Penn State scored 40 points in the paint, and that's been a bugaboo for us over the past few years. In addition to be able to score in the paint, missing layups, and we allowed Penn State, who got off to a really bad start shooting-wise, it might have been around 30, 31% in the first half, wound up shooting 55%. And a lot of that came in the second half where they played us kind of even. But for Rutgers, we shot, in the past, if we were to shoot 57% from the field and 87% from free throws, we'd be doing cartwheels. That's what we did tonight. Shot only 31% from 3. But Penn State, they were bad from 3, 17%. So they did shoot decently well from the free throw line at 77%, but their turnovers, their inability to hit shots early, Rutgers being able to turn those turnovers into points and shooting well was a recipe for a Rutgers win. And it's hard to say that, at 11-15 and 4-11 in the Big Ten, that this is kind of a surprise. But it really is. 5 games to go. Is it 5 games? I think it's 5 games left. One of those games is against Michigan State. Very likely a loss. But, we go off to Minnesota on Saturday, who has a win against Michigan State. But if we can get a win against Minnesota, we have Maryland again. And do we have Penn State again? We might have Penn State, Oregon, or somebody. Where if we can get 4 wins and get to 15 wins, as many wins as last year, this could be Coach Pikel's best coaching job. All right, remember Terry Shea winning Coach of the Year with a 5-7. Right, we were just so bad. The fact that Terry Shea was able to get 5-7 out of a Rutgers football team, they made him Big East Coach of the Year. If we get to 15 wins, that's a good job by Coach Pikel. and not even being able to play the kind of basketball that coach wants to play. Gritty defense, although we've played well at times and in spurts, but inconsistently. Caleb McConnell's not walking through those locker room doors anytime soon. You don't have that wing defenders. We don't have that kind of defense. We're better from the free throw line. A little bit better shooting. But we're kind of soft. We don't have that physical, Cliffy was, I think we kind of underappreciate what he meant to us. When you look at where we are at the 5 position right now, we just don't have the physicality and defensive prowess or the production out of the 5 position to play the kind of basketball that Steve Pikiell would like to play. Nonetheless, all that being said, to get 15 wins out of a team that's kind of doesn't play the kind of defense that Steve likes to play, except with flashes. Don't really have the offensive go-to guys. The guy's going to take the big shots. You don't have the rim protector. You don't have a deep bench. You don't have guys that have played together for a long time. Different world right now. 7 new guys and still managed 15 wins. I think that's a pretty good job, even though at times it's been ugly. Now, a lot of people are thinking that with more money for basketball next year, that might solve some problems. I'm not one of those guys that think that. I think if Steve could just get the kind of guys that he wants to get to be able to play that he wants to play, and be able to pay guys enough to want to come to Rutgers, I think this is a program and a team that's maybe not on the downslide that people thought it is. So let's finish strong. Let's win 3 or 4 out of 5, and it won't be the complete disaster that people thought this season had the potential to be. Although, sometimes when you bottom out like Seton Hall, it's not a bad thing. Sometimes if you're kind of like in that middling, it's like being in the NFL draft, and you're always drafting somewhere in the middle. Sometimes it's just better off to lose so you can get some top draft picks. Nonetheless, you have to be happy with Rutgers' ability to win some games in the Big Ten. Yes, they're not against big teams, and no one thought that the rosters on Rutgers were any better than the teams that we're beating and that are taking up the bottom of the Big Ten right now, be it Northwestern, Minnesota, Penn State, and Oregon. Nonetheless, good win. We go off to Minnesota on Saturday. Everybody enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you the next time.